is 2-5 at Casino Brantford here, about an hour from Toronto. That's a 500 cap, and the new post-COVID rake is 10% up to $15.
Oh my God. 500 cap, like it's a 2.5 with a 500 max buy-in?
Yeah.
That's like Commerce 5.5 and Hollywood Park 5.5. And of course, the flat drop in California is terrible, but this might even be worse. I mean, it's a rake, so it's slightly better than a drop, but 10% up to 15. Now, remember, Boston Harbor Encore, people are bitching about that being 10% up to 10, but ugh, man, that's brutal. That is really, really brutal.
Do you think it's even beatable?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's beatable. So, the things with these things is like, it's really one of these spots where your hourly is a function of how deep the table is. Like your hourly is going to be way less when people start off, like if the average stack is 300 during the day versus maybe playing there for a whole session and getting deep with a couple of guys like over, say, 3,000. You know what I'm saying? Then the rake becomes less of a thing. But as I try to push people up to playing in larger levels when they play like 1, 2, 1, 3, it's just one thing if it's beatable. It's another thing if you're trying to sort of quote unquote build a bankroll. That's really tough to do. Especially if you're doing poker as your sole source of income. It's almost impossible in a very, very high-raked game. You know what I mean? I think it's beatable, for sure.
Awesome. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm a subscriber, and I just stopped playing 1-3, and I'm playing 2-5 exclusively.
Well, I mean, if it's the same rake structure, it's a better deal for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so pre-flop folds to me in the cutoff, and I make it $20 with the King of Hearts and the King of Diamonds.
Is that about the standard open in this game, 4x?
It's either 15 or 20 usually.
And how deep are you guys?
Oh, sorry, we're 1,000 effective.
Okay, there you go.
7-handed.
Okay.
And the only caller is the big blind.
So big blind calls and your head's up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So flop comes 9 of clubs, 3 of spades, and 2 of hearts.
Pretty good flop for you, right? 9-3 deuce rainbow.
Yeah, great flop. He checks to me, and I bet about half pot. I bet 15, which might have been a little low, but I bet 15. And the big blind check raises to 30.
Wow, that's interesting. So he min check raises you.
Yeah, which I took that as one of those they like to do feeler bets, right. So maybe like a. This is 9, some sort of 9.
This is a really interesting spot because what I would say, and I've seen empirical evidence of this when I used to play some of these Chinese apps with a lot of Chinese players that are years behind poker theory. If you bet small, their bluffing frequency would just jack up like crazy just because they didn't think that you had anything. You know what I mean? Just, bet small means you didn't have anything. However, I would say that this sizing, though, is not necessarily a bluff. Now, what's really interesting here, though, is because you're 1K deep. Now, if you started with 400 here, Mark, I think if you start with 400, you actually have a lot, you have more sort of options where you don't have to necessarily be overly concerned with not getting the money in if you just were to call. But I could really see a bet 3-bet here. Now, obviously, you don't want to fold out, but if you think that somebody's doing this with a 9 for protection, you could just make this, say, like, 90 to 100 to build the pot up, because what I fear here happening if you just call is that, especially on a disconnected high card or maybe even whatever happens, it's just going to be reflected with a check on the turn. So calling doesn't really do much here at all. We don't usually talk about bet 3-betting check raises like with overpairs on the flop, but I think this might be one of the times to do it with your stack size.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I call, and so we're 102 going to the turn, which is the 8 of diamonds. So complete rainbow.
Yeah.
And he bets out for what in this game would be a pretty large bet, actually, in this game, $85 into 102.
So he bets 85. It's 9-3 deuce. Turn is an 8 total rainbow. Any background on this guy at all? Any info?
Oh, yeah. He's a regular. He's very loose and passive, so he could have a nine. He could have over pairs. He could have, he could really have anything. He's very passive.
Well, I mean, the 8 doesn't really change anything, right? So if he thinks he's doing something with the 9, maybe he just thinks he's betting for protection. I mean, at this point, the way that you played it, I think I probably would just call. Although, if he ever pulled one of these things where, let's say that you bet 15 on the flop, this is same bet. This isn't small stakes exploits like as a betting pattern. Let's say instead of him like raising to 30, he made it like 50 on the flop and you called, and then like on the turn he bet like 40. I would very seriously consider raising the turn because you're going to get checked out a lot on the river. That same bet or less to the small raise on flop usually is, weakness. Here, he's made a pretty large bet on the turn as played, so maybe I would just call and see what goes on here.
Okay. Yeah. I thought that bet size showed a lot of strength, so now I was not worried, but I'm like, could he possibly have a set or two pair? So I'm like, okay, I'll call. So
there aren't really a whole lot of two pairs. So like if he's playing reasonably, right, like 9-3 deuce. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, this is just a set, or I mean, I guess he could turn 8-9 here too. But so hero calls, and now the pot looks like it's about 270 and change, right? Yeah.
Yep, 270, and the river is a 8 of clubs, which I thought was, that's a good river unless he had 8-9, which
yes,
I can't be scared of that.
Yeah, that's a good river because it cuts down on 8-9 specifically, right?
Right, exactly.
And and maybe pocket 8s that might have made like a feeler bet that turned a set, right? On the now 2/3 of those are gone.
Right, true. I didn't even think of pocket 8s.
Yeah.
So he leads out for which, based on my history with him and in this game, is a very large bet, 175.
So this is another thing straight out of Small Stakes Exploits Guide where it's really about the absolute size of the bet instead of the percentage of the bet in live poker, usually at the, I would say, medium mid stakes to low stakes, meaning that when the pot's small, when somebody bets full pot, it does not mean like 100% pot size bet. But when the pot gets large, especially for a game like this, and this is sort of in between. I'm talking about like if the pot was 1,000 and someone bet like 700, like that is a huge bet, right? In this game here, you're saying it's still a big bet, but it's not like, oh, it's just 2/3. It's just really interesting because he's got such a thin value range here. With what is there. I wonder though, I assume you're thinking about calling or raising here, right?
Yeah. I thought for a couple of minutes, and I could just, hear your voice in my head saying that I really thought I should raise, and then I didn't.
Okay, so hold on a second. So I think where I might raise is like maybe if the bet was like under 100. I think if he went like 85 or 100 again, I would click to like 300 here. But here you also have to sort of take into consideration of what is he taking this line with where he calls, like if you make it say 375, because it doesn't sound to me like you think he has like ace-9 as played or like 10-10 here, No,
not anymore. I really thought that he either flopped a set or he had an overpair that he just didn't 3-bet pre-flop because he's so passive.
Well, it would be good if he had an overpair because you'd be able to get value from that, right? I don't think he's folding if you make it 375 or 400 if he has jacks or queens, but I kind of question if he has those hands with the entire line of the hand, which is just flat pre, min raise flop with jacks, follow up with this, and then follow up a big, you know what I'm saying? It just doesn't really seem all that consistent.
Right, yeah. It's a very strong line, so I just decided to call.
Okay, so hero calls, and
I won. He shows queen.
Oh, queen.
Yeah.
That hurts, Mark. Man. Oh, God, that hurts. Hey, we can't be overly results-oriented, right? Now, if he has queen here, I think if you knew what he had, right?
Right.
I think that he's going to call, but that's definitely a strange one. But
so you don't mind the line, though?
No, I don't. I would bet 3-bet the flop. I mean, that's really where things would get changed up. And I think if you did bet 3-bet the flop, what would have happened if you made it 90 to 100, you would have called. Turn would have been an 8. The pot would have been like 250. I would have bet like 175 to 200. He would have called. Pot would have been like 600. River, I would have bet like 400 and he would have called. So I would have got more value than you did by just bet 3-betting the flop and taking the lead back.
Okay, and you can do that on really dynamic flops like.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily dynamic. It's just, I mean, it is a dynamic flop, but it's not the texture. It has more to do with the fact that everything he's representing that beats you has to just be a set. There aren't viable two pairs here, and I just don't buy the sizing really, to be honest with you. So I appreciate. Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate it.